Resident Evil has been a long-standing franchise that is highly regarded with its good games and pioneering the survival horror genre. So, ever since I have beaten Resident Evil 2 Remake late last year, which is still my favorite game of all time, I've dived into the other titles of the franchise like Resident Evil 1 Remake and Resident Evil 7. So, out of the other Resident Evil games in my backlog, I decided to try out, well, as you can probably guess by the title, Resident Evil 3 Remake. Before I start out, I was generally unsure whether I would actually enjoy the game. I know that there was quite a lot of cut content and that the game was more action focused and that Nemesis plays a lesser role compared to the original and so on. But in the end, it sold quite well and received generally favourable reviews. So without further ado, let's dive right into my experience with Resident Evil 3 Remake. Oh, and one final note. I haven't played the original Resident Evil 3, so I won't be able to criticize the cut content or story changes as much as one would like.
What are you talking about?
I don't have time to explain. You gotta get out of there right now!
Alright, let me grab my...
To start off with, I can say that Capcom are great at making first-person experiences, like the two most recent numbered titles in the Resident Evil franchise, because the intro of Resident Evil 3 has a movable cutscene from Jill's perspective in the first person. Seeing how dark and gloomy her room is, and how her world looks like for just a minute or two, really does show how much she has been through since the incident at the Spencer Mansion. And it is a nightmare sequence as well, which really does hammer home that she is traumatized by the whole Spencer Mansion thing. We then walk around in her apartment for a bit, and before one of the best entrances I've ever seen happens, Nemesis breaks into your apartment and tries to kill Jill. That kinda rhymed unintentionally, but yeah. This is a scripted section with light gameplay elements, so it's basically a quick time event cutscene, but it sure has a strong impact. I've never seen Nemesis other than a clip of his window entrance from the original game, which I find really hilarious for some reason, but this really was a way to leave your mark. Not only does he break down a wall, fall through a roof, and slip out tentacles to take out stars, he takes a piece of the building and rams it after you in a tense hallway sequence before you fall out of the building, and the game begins for real this time. For newcomers and veterans, this is a great way to bring Nemesis' terrifying stature into the modern era, whilst also setting up Jill's personal problems as well. Overall, I rate this apartment chase sequence a solid 10 out of 10. Now we get into the gameplay, and it is very similar to Resident Evil 2's intro, as in, there are a couple of button prompts, basic tutorials for the whole game, and you're good to go. Unlike Resident Evil 2 Remake, where you were more scared and uneasy because of the dark gas station and hallways in Raccoon City Police Department, you are amid a city chaos in Resident Evil 3, where you see zombies walking around, biting civilians, and crowd-crushing fences. Sure, it's all terrifying, but you just get that feeling that this is going to be a lot more action-focused than Resident Evil 2. For me at least, all the fear that Nemesis created in the apartments segment slowly fades away, as there's something about the direction of the game that I can't pinpoint exactly that just makes the tension, that just takes away all the created tension that Nemesis, all his terror is gone, But yeah, nonetheless, it's a good tutorial section, and Nemesis' entrance is S tier. My hunch for this game turned out correct in terms of atmosphere. The game is a lot more action focused than Resident Evil 2, and I mean a lot more. Zombies here are still slow and sway unpredictably like in Resident Evil 2 Remake, but the general intensity of the game is faster, since the areas here are more open than Resident Evil 2 Remake. You can move around more freely, which also shows that the game is action-based. These are all just my initial impressions before I even fire the gun, because I'd be going to do that a lot. Supplies here really aren't scarce. You will find ammo on a bench, ammo in a corpse's pocket, ammo lying on the windowsill, and ammo in the trash can. The amount of ammo really does make the game more action-based, and that isn't necessarily bad. In Resident Evil 2 Remake, you had to think about your supplies and make every shot count, whilst here, I would shoot regardless. There are also explosive barrels and electronic devices that you can shoot to burn or shock zombies, and this does try and encourage you to make your shots count, but because there's just so much ammo at your disposal, I'll end up forgetting that these exist, in turn taking away the survival horror tension. However, from all this action that has been created, we have Resident Evil 3 Remake's greatest gameplay feature, the dodge. The dodge is so much fun to use. You can use these dodges to, it says it in a word, to dodge zombies, and if timed right for a moment, you can dodge and slow down time to line up your shot in bullet time, I think it was. This is really fun, and it's also like balanced in a way, since you can only use the gimmick 3 times in a row before Jill needs to catch her breath and bearings again. However, I can see the issue with this making the game too easy, since if you do end up mastering it, you can literally abuse it, but once all is said and done, this was a great new addition to the game. Now for the actual stuff that you go up against. Resident Evil 2 Remake really had, I'd say, about 4 enemy types off the top of my head, but Resident Evil 3 Remake steps it up and increases the quantity. Not only are the zombies back, but they have special variants, which were used in some of the bonus levels or the bonus extra modes in Resident Evil 2 Remake, like regenerative zombies and big eyeball zombies. They pose a different challenge, and combine this when they come at you in hordes, there's going to be a lot of shooting and rolling to get past them. There are some really cool enemies that they all do something different, and I don't want to spoil them, except for one, the Hunters. I think the Hunters B or Hunters A, the green ones, the green short green fellas. Yeah, they're just short and cool. Yeah, that's all I can say about them. But now for Nemesis. When he does show up, he is really scary. It runs at you faster, can shoot rockets at you, and can trip you. Whenever I heard him show up, I bolted to the next safe room, until he walked into one of the safe rooms right in with me, and then I run to the next room and see him standing there menacingly. For all the good that Nemesis does, there are also flaws. I'll go over the gameplay flaws now and save the big flaw for later. One, Nemesis does not know how to use doors, for the most part. Okay, I get that you need some other safe spots than the save rooms. It is also, but it's absolutely comical in some instances. That's all the problems in terms of Nemesis' gameplay features. But Nemesis does highlight a big issue: the lack of bosses. Apart from Nemesis having some big boss fights, basically the majority of the boss fights are only him. I would have loved to see some variety other than Nemesis. I get that he is the focal point since he keeps coming back, and that's the whole point of the game, but there could have been more variety of bosses. Overall, gameplay is generally good, a lot more fast-paced with more enemies, but a lack of boss fights and urgency taken away from the action-focused gameplay does make the gameplay... It takes a bit of a hit, I'd say. This really doesn't need much explanation or analysis, because really, all the Resident Evil games that I've played all nail the atmosphere. Sound design? Check. Scary vibes, or failing that, an action vibe? Check. Appropriate music when it comes? Check. So we can start with sound. The sound design is something that I feel Capcom nails in each and every single game, and as the technology keeps getting better, so do they. I've been mentioning it a lot throughout the video so far that Resident Evil 3 is a lot more action focused compared to the previous titles, yet still tries to do horror. If you're looking at this game simply as a horror game, you won't get much out of it, but if you view it as an action game, it does exceptionally better. For one, there is a lot more music that is more present and upbeat compared to Resident Evil 2's remake, which barely had any music at all. In Resident Evil 2, the soundtrack was very subtle, and the music that played there were single, and by that I mean that they weren't accompanied by other sounds, and they had to stand on their own ground. In Resident Evil 3, like I said, there is a lot more music, from Nemesis' introduction with heavy percussions to the hospital standoff with tense strings followed by fast-paced beats. Since the game is a lot more action-focused, these pieces of music really hammer at home. Think of a Sonic game with fast music, just change the fast songs to music that is more strategic action, I'd say. Still, talking on the topic of sound, the voice acting here, like my previous experiences with Resident Evil games, is stellar. The voice actors do really good jobs, and I'll talk more about the characters and the story segments, but really, Capcom does know how to make the most out of their voice acting. Now for the visual atmosphere. I think that we can all agree that the RE engine, or Reach for the Moon engine as it's actually called, is one of the best looking gaming engines in gaming right now, period, 100%. Everything here looks fantastic. Of course, I'm not saying it's perfect, it has its flaws, because the graphics look really well, but its art direction can look like any other zombie game in a city. But that doesn't take away from how good it looks. Animations are done well, but there are some problems that arise from these, more specifically the lack of them. In Resident Evil 2 Remake, zombies' limbs would fall off slowly and look disturbing, but this is not in Resident Evil 3, where it just goes poof, like it's just gone. That's a minor complaint, but still on enemies, they are all varied and look terrifying, and due to their unpredictable nature, it all helps in the long run of creating this horror action atmosphere. The environments, like I said, could be any zombie outbreak town, and since Resident Evil 2 had a museum turned police station with locked doors that have a hilariously weird and distinct like the locks. I mean, you won't find that anywhere else other than RE2. It felt kind of a step back, in my opinion, even though they were all cool. It was all cool to traverse in. Raccoon City streets were so much fun to run around in, and I was excited to run around here after imagining what they looked like from playing Resident Evil 2. However, there is one area that I did not like, and that was the lab area. I don't know what it is, but it was just not as exciting to explore. And from the Resident Evil games that I've played, there's always that one section that feels out of place. Resident Evil 2's lab made me want to speed it up so I could just get to the maze and countdown escape sequence, which is so good. Resident Evil 4's island felt a bit out of place with the machine gun enemies. Resident Evil 7 had the boat, yeah. And Village had the cool but wild Redfield section, and Resident Evil 3 just had this boring lab. Overall, I found the atmosphere here to be great, good visuals and amazing sound design, but some inconsistencies, but overall, pretty good.
I'm fine.
Personal space. Okay, I get it. Let's go. Oh, come on.
Story, for me, is quite important in a game. Although I do like heavy narratives, as long as they are well written and paced, I'm fine with basically anything. Which, well, is actually quite a lot thinking about it, but yeah. Take Pokemon Sword. That was no good. But Resident Evil 3 has a very well-paced story. It's easy to explain, follow, and understand. And since there's no deep narrative or lore, really, on surface level, you don't really need to get worried about getting spoiled since it's the gameplay that is the focus here. Don't worry, I won't spoil it. I found the tale of Jill's mad dash through Raccoon City to be very engaging and focused over its runtime. And when I said well-paced earlier, that applies to both Carlos and Jill's sections. I would say that the runtime of both the main characters here are about a 50-50 split, and both give the different perspectives on how they view the Raccoon City crisis. Carlos, I feel, is a very lovable character, and really enjoyed listening to his banter and dialogue with the others, and him, casting his fishing line at Jill. But Jill, I like Jill Valentine a lot, but she really had an attitude problem here, I feel like, which I do get, experiencing the mansion and being a stars and stuff, but I don't know, her writing and art could have been a bit better, but Nicole Tompkins did an amazing job at voicing her. One final positive in terms of the characters was Nikolai, who I won't touch a lot upon, is a really great character. I decided to put this in the story segment since I think it is a core problem which branches across all the other segments of the game, and I was taken aback at the fight against small spoiler here, the dog nemesis at the clock tower. The game is tremendously short. Yes, the story is well paced, but the game isn't, and I know that it's quite hard to explain or not. Think of it like the story here was planned and the game was made to fit the story, rather than both working together. I know it sounds confusing, but just hear me out, yeah. There were some sections where I just thought to myself, wait, that was over quickly. I wasn't long in the sewers, the lab was short yet felt tremendously long because it was so boring, and Raccoon City was over before I knew it. And because the game is as short as it is, there is one problem that bugs me, the clear lack of Nemesis. Nemesis is in the Raccoon City area was perfect. He chased me down, knocked me down, zipped past me, and he did everything, and he felt like a genuine stalker threat, like Mr. X tenfold. However, after the city section, the dude just popped up when the story told him to, and he had no time to flourish. I'm very disappointed by the length of the game, and I beat it in my first try in around 5 hours, which was 3 hours shorter compared to my other runs of the other titles, and even more, 8 hours shorter than Resident Evil 4. The game is short, and I know that there is cut content, and it didn't pay off at all. I did like the story aspects here quite a lot, but the short runtime really sticks out like a sore thumb. Resident Evil has really captivated me with its gameplay loop, and above all, the replay value of the games. I'm replaying the RE2 campaign, playing Mercenaries in Resident Evil 4, and replaying Village and RE7 are fun when I get the time to. Until I get to the boat of RE7, I really don't like that part, but sadly, Resident Evil 3 has little to no replay value, in my opinion. This is because of the unlock system. Every Resident Evil that I've played, you unlock stuff by completing the games faster and more efficiently as you knock your times down, from the Force Survivor in Resident Evil 2 to the walking shoes in RE7, which are some of the unlocks that you get. Here, there are no extra modes to unlock, and all the item unlocks are from the shop. Yes, you can buy the unlocks that you want, and I don't think that's a really good idea, as it takes out the feeling of working hard to unlock something, whilst here you earn some currency to buy stuff. Yes, Resident Evil Village had this shop too, and I didn't mention it in the Resident Evil Village review, but Village did have a mercenaries mode, so that keeps it afloat, and I preferred Village's world overall. Briefly, I can't see myself replaying Resident Evil 3 anytime soon, with no extra modes and the shop feature taking away that dopamine feeling of unlocking something. Resident Evil has quickly become one of my favorite game franchises, and even if the games do vary from action to survival horror, the games always manage to entertain me and they all feel like a Resident Evil game, and that is no different for Resident Evil 3 Remake, with good action, faster gameplay with new combat mechanics like the roll, and, generally has good action. The game is very good. I mean, it's good, yeah. However, there are some problems. There is little to no horror at all, as survival horror is barely present with an overabundance of resources and really a very short game in terms of Resident Evil standards, and this length really is a problem that hampers all other areas of the game. Overall, I did enjoy my time in Resident Evil 3, but I can't see myself replaying it due to its lack of replay value, but for a single experience, it's a solid game. With a new twist on the Storm experience, I won't be giving numbered scores anymore. I think that's too specific, I feel. I think, since some people, when I see a 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10, they're like, oh no, overrated or stuff like that, but yeah, no, we're just going to give it a general score. So yeah, just a general recommendation, and it was my pleasure that I give this game a score of good. Hey guys, thanks for watching the video, and I hope that you enjoyed yet another Storm experience. Next week I've got a video essay planned, which I've got quite a few planned out for the next coming weeks, but I'm not sure what about to do it on, but I do have some ideas, and it's going to be a while until the next Storm experience, I feel. So yeah, I think I'm going to do like maybe one Storm experience a month maybe, and yeah, that's the small update. But yeah, I guess that's all for me. The new Pokemon Legends Arceus update is fun, and Generation 9 looks promising from the trailers that they announced on the Pokemon Presents on Sunday, and I hope to play Elden Ring someday. So yeah, adios, and Storm out.